Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. Let's start with EVE Online news. Still not a lot on the horizon. We do know now from the articles website that CSB is working on another launcher iteration, which will hopefully make it easier for people that have multiple accounts to launch those games in like a single move. But well, it's still gonna be in beta phase and it is CCP and the launcher, so always be a little bit careful when it comes to that. For me, very low impact, of course. I only have and play on one account. That's all I'm really willing to put into EVE. It's basically a matter of time management. I got plenty of stuff to do as well, so it's one account for me. Next to that, I don't even know when the February patch is going to come out. We do know that there's going to be like little things that are going to come to the game with the next patch. If you want to check that out, you can definitely take a look at the test server forums, and then you can also go on CC. I think that stuff has been deployed there. I took a quick look on CC, actually hoping to spot the next event, but nothing so far. So let's move on to the New Eden store, because there is one more bit of news there. Look at that, the Serene How skins are now up. The first skins that were exclusive to the Chinese server, or the first few skins, I think. Here we also have Absent Hero skins, which I haven't seen before. Let's see if they have this, what kind of symbols they have. Not really sure, but I think both of these, apparently, the Serene, lots of them, Serene How, Serene 2 skins, Absent Hero skins are now available in the store. Look at that, I actually think that this one looks really good. Hyperion Serene Mang skin. Oh, so it's just a Serene line, and then it gets a different type of like surname, you could say. But look at that, I love the black and red at the back here, and then the white adds a nice touch, but it's not so overwhelming. You still have lots of black in here. I think that this is nicely balanced, very good looking skin. You also have a full bundle if you want, and yeah, that's basically the new stuff. In the New Eden store here, we get some skins that were formerly exclusive to the Chinese server. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. There's definitely a few good looking ones in there as well. Let's move on to the market itself. As always, we'll start with plex and stuff. Let's say 245. Like that, and you may already have noticed from the ticker, plex up 6% in JITA. So let's take a quick look at that. 3.8 million for the sellers in JITA, 3.6 million, a bit above that for the buyers in JITA. If we move to the player-owned trade hubs, well, almost 3.7 million for the sellers there, very close to the buyers, so these won't be moving much, exactly right around 3,632,000 ISK. But if we look at the chart, of course, 1 year high point has been reached, breaking straight through the 3.5 million barrier, and now stopping here at around 3.65 million ISK. So that was a very nice climb that I know one of the viewers called right here. From mid-August to November, we could have gone from 2.75 million to 3.3 million, something like that. But now we have a second leg up here. 1 year high point. Definitely, if you look at this entire chart, a nice sell opportunity in plex if you want that liquid ISK, that is, of course. The multiple pilot train certificate doing the same thing, except it's hesitating a little bit more at the tail end. Still 5-day moving average, reaching a 1 year high point again as well, selling now for 1.6 billion, more than that even. Buyers practically well, let's say above 1.5 billion, but you know, edging closer and closer to that 1.6 as well. And so here, of course, patience would have really paid off. We had plenty of buy opportunities below 1 billion ISK, where we could have gotten some nice multiple pilot train certificates, and now you have a chance to sell them for around 1.6 billion. Keep one thing in mind, I always say this, like a couple hundred a day, that's all we manage for this. So if you have one or two, I think you can make some very nice ISK. If you have hundreds or even thousands of them, you're gonna be stuck with them for a little while. That's always the danger with the multiple pilot train certificates. Next up, we have the skill extractor. Same thing, straight up here, 1 year high point, straight through the 400 million ISK mark as well. 415 million now for the sellers, 405 for the buyers. Not as nice if you look at the multiple pilot train certificates with the dips here. Still in August again with the bottom at around 310 million ISK and now 415 million. That is not bad, could have made for a very nice trade. Let's take a look at the impact on the skill injectors then. Here is the large skill injector, basically staying above 850 million or trying to stay above 850, and it is very close to 1-year high point. So that actually looks like it's going to come in line with what's happening with the skill extractors, and it's basically keeping these skill injectors at a pretty high price point. 863 million in fact for the sellers, 841 million for the buyers. Next up we have the small skill injectors, sorry. Same pattern right here, right, staying at the high point. Not exactly the 1-year high point, but definitely well above average and still a great time to be selling these, I think. 172 million for the sellers, 166 million is for the buyers. And then finally the daily alpha injectors. You can see they are also continuing their ascent towards that average price. Personally, I would wait for 60 million on the sellers before selling whatever I managed to grab on this massive CCP sale here, when you could have bought them for less than 40 million ISK. They're already selling at 57 million, so 40 to 57, that's practically a 50% profit, not bad. I would wait for 60 myself, and then 53 million for the buyers. They are being forced up, so lots of inflation apparently right now in the Plex related items, and Plex is just charging forward, heading towards 3.6 million ISK here, or in fact 3.7 million in Cheetah Station. Let's see here, yeah, 3.8. Someone just came in a couple minutes ago with 50 of them for less than that. But the pressure is obviously on. Everything is on the increase, and I think that these are nice sell opportunities at the moment. Next up, we have the minerals coming in at 7 minutes. Like that. Let's take a look at that. Also a little bit of movement here, unfortunately, for the worse, for titanium, breaking down to less than 4.5 ISK on the chart. Currently selling for, let's see, Cheetah is actually important here, 453, just above that. Buyers at 436, your average is obviously below 4.5 ISK. And then here, that's the bad news, of course, still 2 billion, 2 billion, 2 billion. There's still just too much titanium coming to the market to maintain a price of above 4.5. I think we are just going to go continue to go slowly downwards here on titanium at the moment. Next up, we've got pyrite. Made a little bit of a comeback after reaching a very, very bad low point of almost 3 ISK here, and it's trying to work its way back above 3.5. It did so, and it's maintaining that, but I think we'll see the pressure mounting here as well. 377 for the sellers, 354 for the buyers. And then the bad news here, 2 billion units of pyrite, 1.4 billion units of pyrite. So trying to sell just below 3.9, and then someone else tried to sell at 3.8, and now here is where the competition starts. So it's slow, but there is definitely pressure on pyrite yet again. For Mexalon, we had a little bit of a comeback as well, back to more than 60 ISK, which was very good news, but it's just the situation in EVE at the moment. Too much mining, not enough destruction, not enough war, and so the pressure is back on Mexalon, heading back down towards, well, the 1-year low point. You could put that at 55 ISK on a couple of daily averages, and look at that, 58.43 for the sellers, but 54.98 for the buyers, exactly below 55 ISK. So that is again bad news, and despite that, we still have here 600 million units, 200 million units, trying to get rid of some of that Mexalon at any opportunity. You see the volumes increase actually, and then you see the price decline yet again. That's unfortunately the situation for minerals at the moment. Isogen, same thing, except its increase in price was very slow and gradual. From mid-November, we reached a 1-year low point of less than 15 ISK. We managed to work our way back up there, slowly working our way up towards 17 ISK. But here at the tail end, you can see the same story as with the other minerals. The pressure is back, too much supply, not enough destruction. 17.24 ISK for the sellers, 16.97 for the buyers. They want to get back to less than 17 ISK here. And unfortunately, 85 million, 83 million, another 36, another 137 here. just driving the price down from, well, we managed to get to 18 or close to that. But yeah, supply keeps coming in here and is slowly going to drive the price back down. Noxium actually for the 1 year chart held on the best to 300 ISK here for quite a while. Look at that average, not bad, but look at the tail end here. Yet again, same story. Breaking through the 300 ISK barrier, now in between 275 and 300 on the chart, selling for 289 and buyers coming in at 280. So unfortunately sellers broke down. They are now selling Noxium for less than 300 ISK. They did so well in the last couple of weeks. I was actually very impressed with how well Noxium held on. But eventually that pressure comes in here. Look at that at 300 ISK. You still have like 22 million at just below 305. Then you get another 15 million ISK coming in at just above 300. And then 5 million at 299. And then of course you're off to the races. Once someone brings a decent amount at less than 300 ISK, well, people start to compete with that. And you still have 2 million here, 3 million here. 45 million then at less than 290, and that is of course putting quite a bit of a backstop to the price. It's gonna really keep that from getting back above 300 ISK for quite a while. Next up we have Zydrine that well, managed a little bit of a comeback as well. 1 year low point at 400 ISK, went back to 600, but again here at the tail end obviously the pressure is on, selling now for 531 ISK. Buyers coming in at just above 500 ISK. And then for Megasite we have a similar picture, a little bit less pronounced here in the upswing and the peak, but it's definitely something very similar. Low point 375, manages to come back to 600 ISK, and now here at the tail end you can see the slow pressure again. 550 pretty much for the sellers, 503 for the buyers, very close to one another. Basically the difference between Zydrine and Megasite is completely gone. I think it is because of moon mining. You can basically, you know, if Megasite is doing better, well, just focus on Megasite, perhaps put up a couple extra refineries on moons that do drop lots of Megasite but not a lot of Zydrine, and so you can basically in a pretty safe way decide to focus on Megasite or focus on Zydrine, just because you can choose the compositions of the moons where they come from. And then finally we have a Morphite that is, yeah, man, tried to get back to 8000 ISK, managed to get there a little bit for a while, but here at the tail end now pressure again breaking down, and so we're going to be very close to another 1 year low point. 7,828 for the sellers, 7,463.64 for the buyers. Buyers below 7,500 ISK. If we put that on the chart, obviously a great buy opportunity, but the general trend in minerals, unfortunately, lots of pressure, too much supply, not enough destruction. Next up we have PI coming in at 12.55. Like that, and let's see if we've got a different story here. Unfortunately for the broadcast nodes, no. That is good news for people that also want to build Asbels or anything like that. I feel like, you know, I made an Asbel. It is a large structure, but it is definitely the cheapest one, and something that, well, if it's gone, it's gone. It's still okay, something that I can recover from. That's the reason why I chose it. And at the moment, look at that advanced PI material, the broadcast nodes. We clearly see that at this, from summer on here, we stayed below average. Then here, this dip is actually, I think, the launch of the new set of upwell structures for nullsec, where I think lots of people over speculated, tried, and myself included. I didn't buy a lot, but I did buy some here on some of these dips, expecting to see a massive increase in demand because of all of the nullsec infrastructure that would have to be built when that came out. But yeah, everything was much more muted than expected. Too many people speculated, so we had this oversupply situation, and look at here at the tail end, we're basically back in that situation with average prices below 2 million ISK. That is very cheap, just above 2 million for the sellers, but 1.9 million for the buyers of broadcast nodes. Very cheap. 1 year low point, maybe not there just yet, but definitely well below average. Construction blocks, I managed to buy those for less than 10k. We had a nice little peak up to 13,000, and we're basically settling back to a less than average price, I think. Well, 11,800 for the sellers is still around average, you could say, but 10,700 is obviously below average for the buyers. Consumer electronics next also went to a 1-year low point of 11,000 ISK, tried to come back to 13k, not even its average, and already under pressure again. 12,000 for the sellers, 11,000 for the buyers. I think basically for the non-fuel items at the moment it's really looking like there is too much supply, not enough consumption, and you can make some really good deals. If I look at my ticker here, I've got some construction blocks, I've got some consumer electronics, all of those ready to go, but I am personally going to wait for a real and a nice sell opportunity. I have a longer horizon for these goods, and that would be a CCP announcement of a new structure. I think it can still happen, although not on the radar anymore that much from what we're currently hearing from CCP. Still, we know that they would love to do propaganda towers, and the tentative plans that we've seen so far is for extra large, large and medium ones. So it could be very interesting and a massive sink for these PI materials. So as a result, right now for me, it's looking for those best sales, try to get them as low as possible, be ready when we do see those spikes come back. Eventually that is going to happen. That's exactly what's happening right now with the fuel-related PI materials. Coolants, for instance, still working on strength after strength, staying above 12,000 ISK at the moment. 12,750 for most sellers, 12,100 for the buyers. Buyers above 12k, that is obviously very close to that 1-year high point again. Very, very strong performance here, and if you had the patience to wait 10 months, you could have bought these for close to 8,000 ISK, and just like that, more than 50% profit. Although again, you do need patience in the PI market. So right now, that is the way I'm reading this. Fuel related, like enriched uranium, look at that, another 1-year high point. Sellers coming in at 16,400. People need fuels, and yeah, that is just emptying out at the moment. Great time to produce and sell enriched uranium. But look at the 1-year trade here. Let's say the 8-month trade. 11,000 ISK, probably some buy opportunities at 10,000 ISK, now selling for 16,000 ISK, like that. Pretty damn awesome. And then the other side of the story, integrity response drones, for instance, average used to be 2.5, 2.6 million ISK. Now we're still hovering in that 2.25 to 2.5 million range. 2.4 almost for the sellers, 2.3 million almost for the buyers. Definitely below average. Mechanical parts is for fuels, so we're obviously above average again. How close are we to 12,000 from the sellers? 11,500, a bit off the highs here, but still 11,000 for the buyers as well. What is also noticeable is, of course, the narrow margin here. The buyers forced up substantially in the price of fuel-related PI materials. Nuclear reactors here. Did I make the sale? No, I think I'm still... Oh, yeah, I'm trying to sell for 110. Not sure. I'll have to check on that a little bit. Maybe by next week I'll have a better report about my ticker. But yeah, I managed to buy these for like less than 90,000 ISK here. Nice little spike, so good to see some volatility back in the nuclear reactors. But you can also see that the decline is going to be quite serious. Sellers are still at 105,000 ISK, but buyers, lack of buyers in nuclear reactors, they're back down to 86,000 ISK. That is pretty wide margin between the two, so very difficult with these kinds of volumes as well to get sales going. I'm trying, you know, at a decent price point, but for a lot of the others I think I need more patience. Just wait for that right sell opportunity. Keep looking out for buy opportunities. Look at organic mortar applicators again. Low point is around 1 million ISK. Obvious decline. We're well below average. Just below 1.1 million for the sellers, and look at that, 995,000 ISK for the buyers. So you can grab organic mortar applicators for less than 1 million ISK at the moment. Robotics is a little bit below average, and it is tied to fuels, which makes it a little bit of a strange one compared to everything else in the PI segment at the moment, but it is still holding on decently well, I would say. 99,000 for the sellers, 95,000 for the buyers. It's not a great price, it's not as good as what Coolant is doing at the moment, for instance, but it's still an okay price for robotics. Self-harmonizing power cores, right, more bad news for the advanced PI materials. Again, look at that decline here in the 5-day moving average, bouncing off of the 2 million price range, which is obviously pretty low. Sellers just above 2 million, buyers just above 1.95 million. So here again, self-harmonizing power cores, you're grabbing them for less than 2 million ISK at the moment. Superconductors next, a bit of volatility here, that's pretty damn nice and kind of a strange one, definitely an odd one out here with this kind of a chart. But at the moment basically settling back at 12,000 disk apparently, 12.9 for the sellers, 11.8 for the buyers, and the average in between that is probably bound to be around here, the average price for superconductors. So quite a bit of volatility here in the last couple of months, which made for some very interesting like small-term opportunities, but also always felt a little bit risky to take that gamble. Test cultures next, went up to 9,000 disk, back under pressure right here. 8,800 for the sellers, lack of buyers, look at that, 8,100 for one buyer, then we're down to 8,000 and then below that. So look out for that. I do think that if you can grab this for, well, let's say substantially below 8,000 ISK, then you do have some very nice test cultures in reserve for later down the line. And then wetware mainframes, it's the same story, except that this one seems to be going for a 1-year low point. Actually, is it down to less than 2.1 million for wetware mainframes? Well, 2.1 for the first seller, 2.2 million for most sellers, but 1.7 million for the buyers. That is extremely, extremely cheap for wetware mainframes, which by the way has, I think, known amongst the highest peaks as well with the introduction of structures, because they do tend to become bottlenecks when it comes to construction. Wetware mainframes, 1-year low point, very, very cheap, grabbing them for less than 1.8 million pretty easily, I think. That is not bad. Another one of those longer term investments that you could make. Granted, it's a bit of a gamble, but I personally don't think that CCP is done with the structures just yet. Next up, advanced wound materials, 2140. Like that. Let's take a look at these again. Unfortunately, in the last couple of weeks, and it looks like we're continuing that trend, a lot of these have been on the in-between price ranges, right? So we reached bottoms here in November and a little bit before that in October. Nice little buy opportunities, but we never really break out to a nice sell opportunity, and are basically stuck on that less than average price, but nowhere near the bottom just yet. So crystalline carbonites is exactly in that situation. You can see how flat we are with a bit of pressure at the tail end, but we would need to see buyers below 150 before I would call it a buy opportunity, and that is obviously not the case right now. Ferrite carbide, that is a bit more interesting, right? Average is below 150, bit of a bump up to 175. So you sellers below 150, buyers at 144. All right, ferrite carbide, I would call this a buy opportunity, but you need a long horizon for this as well, because I think we need nullsec to be engulfed in a massive war before we actually see some real change here. Next up, we have the titanium carbide, also under pressure, but we know we want to see buyers below 150, and they're still at 172, so that is too early for my book. Tungsten carbide, same thing, nice little comeback to 225. We want a bottom of like less than 175 and 185 for the buyers. So we're still nowhere near those buy opportunities, except for ferrite carbide, 144 for the buyers. If I try to make something close to that show up on the chart, we're talking right around here. That is not bad at all. Next up, the metamaterials. Here are the photonic metamaterials. So you know that a bottom of 15,000 is possible. We can see that pressure at the tail end here. If you look at, let's say, the last 10 months, we are in an interesting spot with 16,400 for the buyers. Let's see if I can get that to show up, which would be around here. But I'd be hesitant because of that current pressure, and then what we know has happened like around a year ago. Plasmonic metamaterials, same thing, right? 17,500. Well, actually here we are very, very close to those 1-year bottom prices as well. So buyers 18,000, a bit above that. You could see this as a buy opportunity. I personally feel like it's maybe just a little bit too early to do so. Non-linear metamaterials next. That's obviously 20k is that bottom that we want to reach, and 23,000 for the buyers. That's a big no. Terahertz metamaterials also landing nowhere near that 20,000, 22,000 almost for the buyers. So that again, it's too early. some of these do look interesting. If you disregard that very first bottom, these look quite interesting for photonic and the plasmonic metamaterials, but personally I think it's too early to jump on that bandwagon just yet. And then the other advanced move materials, let's take a look at Ferrite carbide. Same story, right? 85,000 discs, sorry, as the bottom. We came very close to that a couple of times, but now we're basically moving away from that and still staying well below average. Ferrogel, look where we come from early in the year, so that's not a gamble I'm willing to take. It's possible that 45,000 is like the new normal price range because of the massive supply at the moment, but a pronounced buy opportunity, that's a no. Fullerites, after reaching the bottom, 900 disc, again October, November here, worked its way back to 1100, bit of pressure at the tail end, but the buyers are still at 987 ISK, so still too early for me. Hypersynaptic fibers, same thing, definitely not at the bottom. Nano transmitters, same thing again here, 4500, lovely little downward spiral here with a nice buy opportunity in October. But then a sell opportunity never really materializes, slight bump up to 5,500, but here we're basically staying below average and nowhere near the bottom. Phenolic composites, that is a bottom though, that is pretty damn nice, now hovering at 2,000 ISK at the moment, buyers are down to 1,906 ISK, so here again, phenolic composites, that would be a buy opportunity if you're invested in some advanced move materials. So we've got this and we have the Ferrite carbide so far that are definitely at 1 year low points here. And then we've got the ceramic fibers to stop, and that's the same story here. That November bottom at 400 ISK, very nice of course, but is 550 really that sell opportunity? Well, it was probably a very nice little trade to make here, but now where are we stuck at? 450, a bit above that, 430 for the buyers, 469 for the sellers. Yeah, you want to see buyers below 400 and call that a buy opportunity. So advanced move materials not in an easy spot at the moment. I think it is same story as with the minerals. Not enough destruction, not enough challenge, an actual massive war in nullsec to really break the status quo here, which means that in general we are oversupplied, we are at below average prices, and in November we did see some of those nice bottoms form, which as a result means that it's very tricky now to actually take the jump on buying some of these or a lot of these. Next up we have the Tech 2 ships coming in at 27.25. Let's see, as a result I do think that these are also going to be basically stable at below average prices, and here we have the Aries dipping down towards 27.5 million, 28 almost for the sellers, 26 for the buyers. Not a lot of buyers at the moment for Tech 2 ships, or for the Aries I should say, so here again not the bottom, definitely a below average price. Basilisk, that one is breaking out. We had a small buy opportunity here for close to 200 ISK, currently selling for 328 million ISK, 285 for the buyers. This is though why I love the Tech 2 ship segment. It's been a tough time finding the necessary volatility, but this is great. 200 million less than a month ago, now selling for 327 million, 328 million ISK. That is a nice trade that you could make, a nice profit that you could have taken here in less than a month, which is something that does happen in the Tech 2 market. So thank you Basilisk, I didn't grab that opportunity myself, but this is a very nice trade, and this is the kind of volatility that I'm personally looking for in the Tech 2 market. Cerberus is continuing on its slow decline, not at the bottom yet, but obviously below average. Sellers at 227 million ISK, buyers at 215. That's pretty cheap for a Cerberus, but know that here again in October, it's again that October-November dip, we went to less than 200 million ISK. For the Crow, definitely under pressure. Not at a 1 year low point, I don't think. Let's see where the buyers are at. 25.8. That is pretty low for the Crow. Again here, Crow 25.8. That is around here on the chart. Very low, very cheap. A buy opportunity, yes, but I think it is for the longer term, to be honest. The Guardian also up, so it looks like the logistics are having a good time and are in demand at the moment. Here again, that November dip, we could have bought these then for 200 million ISK. Now, lack of supply, selling for 269 million ISK on the Guardian. Not as good a trade as a Basilisk, but obviously logistics cruisers seem to be in vogue right now. The Heretic is continuing its slow decline, landing at 60 million ISK. Buyers coming down to 58.7 million a buy opportunity. Well, since we only have 6 buy orders right now for Heretics, yes, I would try to grab one for less than 60 million. I don't think you're gonna regret that. The Hound slowly working its way back to 30 million ISK, 30.5 for the sellers, 27 still for the buyers, nowhere near the bottom, and I would call that back to the average price though. The Ishtar is staying below average. The bottom here when we broke through 230, yeah, still 228 for the buyers, 240 for the sellers. The average prices though are below average and not at the bottom, but the buyers are still below 230 million. So if you want some cheap Ishtars, and you guys know that I absolutely love the Ishtar, this is the time to buy a couple. The Manticore is working its way back up from 30 million, so that is pretty nice. Currently selling for 34.4 million. Buyers coming in at 29 million, still below 30, that is not bad. And I bought some cheap ones. Manticores at below 28 million, so I could make a small trade here, try and sell them for 34, but as I've said, I'm really going to be a little bit more patient with the things that I've bought. I think if something does happen in Nasdaq, that 40 million for instance is an opportunity that might show itself, and since I check these ships every week anyways, I'm actually going to wait for that one. The Munin back under pressure, and yeah, quite a lot of pressure at the tail end apparently. Sellers at 247 million, buyers at 212 million. That is actually very cheap for the Munin, especially if we look at the chart here and try to get 212 million. That is right here on the chart. Yeah, not bad. Nemesis continuing with the bad news. That makes this one a risky or not an optimal investment. I bought Nemesis at 24.5 million and currently buyers are down to 22.7 million ISK. Yeah, definitely a nice buy opportunity. As I've said, I would buy these for the longer term. For something to happen in Nasdaq, then you'll get a nice sell opportunity. But we can see that, yeah, Nemesis 1 year low point, very good time to buy these. Then the Oneros logistics up a little bit in price, back to 200 million ISK, 208 for the sellers, 183 still for the buyers. So that's still not great. And then the Purifier diving back to less than 30 million ISK, 27.4 for the sellers here. So we are again talking not really at the low points just yet, but definitely trading below average. Saber back down as well. Buyers down to 66.5 million, sellers down below 70 million ISK. That's actually pretty damn cheap for the Saber as well. And then we've got the Scimitar next, bouncing off of that 200 million mark here. Buyers still at 192. And then the Stiletto finally is flat. Nope, actually breaking 30 million at the tail end. Sellers now coming in at 29, buyers at 28. Yeah, the general trend here in these Tech 2 ships, honestly, if you're looking for those trades, which I'm trying to do slowly, I don't want to rush in here either, but I've got some Manticores, I've got some cheap Nemesis, I've got some Hounds at 25.2 as well, then this is the time to do so. There's actually a lot more of them that are currently like well below average and actually playing with low points. I personally like where the Ishtar is at. I definitely like where the Saber is at. If you can grab some of these for less than 70 million ISK, seems like a good deal anyways. And now we're talking 67, something like that should be doable. That is definitely pretty cheap for the Saber as well. They're bigger investments. They are Tech 2 ships after all. But if you can make them at the right time and then hold on to them, be patient enough, wait for that action to come back and wait for that real sell opportunity, then I think that there's some awesome trades to be made. My one warning, that I always should give here is obviously be careful with the volumes. If you're going to put up a buy order and try to grab 100 munins now at like 213 million ISK, well, you're gonna be in trouble. Do this with reasonable volumes, and then that way I think that there are nice opportunities in the Tech 2 market right now for some buying. Next up we have the Tech 3 market, 34.40. Like that. Confessor, let's take a look at that. Still staying around the 40 million mark, a bit below that. Look at that volume spike, that is quite surprising. So let's see what's happening. Sellers 39.9 million, buyers 36 million, so pretty narrow margin. And then the selling volumes 10, 29, 30. It's a bit more. 180 here, 67, there's a bit more on the market, but it's still not completely unreasonable, and I think we went above 40 million, which explains the 180 coming in here at 40.4 million ISK. So nothing too crazy still at this point, but a little bit of an increase in the volumes has been spotted. Let's see what the heck it does then. Spike up to 50 million, back down to 45 million, 46.7 for the sellers, 42 million for the buyers, and here on the volumes, well, it feels like it's a little bit more, but I'm not seeing the hundreds here either, so nothing too crazy. What was that down below here? Yeah, 234 though, at 46.8 million. Yeah, increased volumes spotted here yet again. Then we've got the Jackdaw, price up to 45 million, bit of pressure at the tail end, 44.5 for the sellers, 39.6 for the buyers. Volume wise here, that's more in line with what we had in the last couple of weeks, couple of 20s, even close to 50, but everything else very much muted. And then finally we have the Zwepel as well, went up to 40 million ISK, now a bit of pressure at the tail end. Sellers coming in at 39 million, buyers at 35 million, and here on the volumes 100 here, 30. The rest is okay, but you get a little bit more in general coming to this market. Is this the canary in the coal mine? Is this showing that basically after the disruption in wormhole space, things are now finally settling down a little bit more there, and we've got some more supply coming in? I think it's possible. That would be my personal theory on what's happening here, and as a result, to me that means keep an eye on this. If that trend continues, we could start to see pressure on the prices and potentially buy opportunities as well. It's a bit too early for that right now though. On the cruiser front, we've got the Legion up a little bit at the tail end, but again pretty stable above 160, 174 for the sellers, 160 for the buyers, and volume wise this is actually pretty low, I would say. Next up we've got the Loki, same thing, pretty flat above 200 million ISK, 210 for the sellers, 218 for most, 195 for the buyers, and again on the volumes here for the cruisers, there's a few more sell orders, but it is of course the Loki here, and the volumes are definitely not crazy. Next up we've got the Proteus, flat above 160 as well, 168 to 169 for the sellers, 157 for the buyers, and again looking at these volumes, that is more than reasonable, very low actually, 1 to 5 is definitely not that much. Cruisers on the lower end. And then the Tengu dropping back to less than 180, 174.5, a little bit less than that for the sellers, 163 for the buyers, and except for 78 here, we again have very, very reasonable volumes. So right now, on this week, I would say in the Tech 3 market, that the cruisers are stable, but with very low volumes available on the market. Definitely nothing crazy, no risk of oversupply there at the moment. In fact, the exact opposite. If someone needs a Tengu fleet or a Legion fleet or something like that for nullsec, they're gonna drive the price up by quite a lot with not that much extra demand. But in the destroyer market, we are seeing more ships coming to the market here, which might indicate that the forges are burning in wormhole space, that production lines are coming back online, and that we might be in for more supply coming in general. I think that might be what will be happening. And then for the extra product this week, let's take a look at, let's say 39 minutes. I chose the Gecko, and then also the fuel blocks, because we saw that the biggest, you can see that right now, in fact, nitrogen fuel blocks up 22.56% on the seller prices right there. That is quite a lot, so definitely worth looking. But first, I am going to do a quick search for the Gecko. Because it is one of those unique items that I should check from time to time, and we can see this is very strange. On the year chart, the Gecko is down from around 110 million ISK down to 90 million ISK, and in fact here in January we had another dip down to almost 80 million ISK, and then a resurgence back to 90 million ISK. So 91 million for the sellers, 85.4 million for the buyers. Quite a decent availability, look at that, 166, 119, that's quite a decent volume of these geckos as well. And actually one of the goods that you would think of as an inflation hedge, something that cannot be produced endlessly in the game, should go up with monetary inflation, but nope, this one actually is down for the year on average, losing around 10% of its value, which is kind of strange. But then on the other hand, of course, if you look at this entire chart, you look at the nature of the Gecko and you look at this dip in January, that was a nice buy opportunity to buy some cheap geckos at around 80 million ISK, and then we'll have to see what happens for that in the upcoming months and year, of course. I personally do think that for the long term and as an inflation hedge, the Gecko is not a bad purchase, but this is basically a crazy year. I don't know of geckos coming into the game in the last event or anything like that, and still we have this pressure that has been shown here on the Gecko. Crazy situation. If you have an explanation, feel free to put that in the comments. But then we still have the fuels to go, which is under my extra tab here. Helium fuel blocks went to 1 year low point, very low in fact, 18.6k, bit of a resurgence, but nothing too crazy, still selling for 19,400 to 19,500 ISK. That's still cheap, well below average. Buyers at 18,500 ISK is very cheap. Hydrogen fuel blocks 19,700 for the sellers, 17,400 for the buyers. We can see on the chart here as well, well below average towards its low points. But then normally we get the nitrogen fuel blocks. Yeah, one person is now already coming in with less than 20,000 ISK for the sellers. But when I was checking for the ticker, look at that, 23,900 ISK for the sellers and the buyers at 18,600. So we definitely have a bit of a spike here. And sellers, in fact, someone emptied everything out on these volumes up to 23,000 ISK. So it's not going to last long apparently. Volumes are going to drive the price back down very quickly to a less than average price. I think we're going to stay below 20,000 ISK apparently on the chart. But that was a pretty crazy situation. Look at that. Someone bought... let's see what this is. 3.7 million, averages would be 1.2. Yeah, almost 3 times the normal volumes traded yesterday. And just going straight for the sell orders, because we were basically empty of anything below 23,888 ISK here. That was quite crazy, but it is a spike that is not going to materialize or showing a complete change of trend in the fuels. Because here, for instance, we have the oxygen fuel blocks that are still selling for 21,000, buyers at 19,000, which is very cheap at the moment as well. So it was basically a false alarm if the ticker made it look like something completely changed in the fuel blocks here. This quick check in the extra product shows that that is not the case. They are still well below average, but a crazy volume purchase here happened apparently in the nitrogen fuel blocks. And that's going to be it for this EVE Talk, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.